All right, it's 1975. We're going by the Bell Building. I'm headed to my 7th grade classroom. Now, at this point, I was also going to other buildings on the campus for class. And so we're pulling in between what's the new library and the building to the left you're looking at was the 7th grade and also the science class. Now, if you look in this photograph from the Bell Building steps, that library wasn't there then. It's pretty much just a volleyball court and a play field. So that didn't get built till later on. They had an old wood building that was right beside this that was the old library. And so this is how I would come to school, going to the 7th, and I'm sure other students probably went the same way. And so basically going in, walking up to the class, this is going to be the Murray Thomas Building. You can see the placard right there. This was also my geology class too when I was going to Faulkner College. That was kind of ironic to be back in this classroom again after all those years. And he was actually a real good teacher. I really kind of enjoyed his class, learned a lot about the area. He kind of equated that as well. He even took us outside the classroom. It kind of reminded me of organic in that respect because he was showing us all the sand outside and saying how that came from the Great Smoky Mountains being quartz sand. And that's why we have the white beaches down here that pretty much only go to Destin, Florida. All right, we're headed to the science class, which was next door to the 7th grade. And so they had some 8th graders that went to this class at the same time I did. And so I'd fraternize with them. And when I was doing my tour, I looked in here and I said, oh my God, there's people in here sleeping. And then I realized they're just mannequins as part of the same science class, but just more advanced than what we had. I mean, pretty much all we have is just a handful of chemicals and I think a beaker and a test tubes. But there was a time that I got into these bushes in front of this thing back then, and when I came out of them, I was really stinking pretty bad. And my mother says, what the heck did you get into? I says, well, I don't know. I was in the bushes, in front of the science class, and she just knew that I got into some sort of chemical, so she called the school, wanting to know what it was I got into. And as it turned out, it was a skunk, of all things. You said, well, how could that be? I mean, this is Fairhope, Alabama. Well, it was still a lot of country back then as well. And so that's what happened. That was the maddest I've ever seen her. I think she even had to throw my clothes away. I mean, they were just really that bad. All right, guys, how many of y'all remember the TV show Kung Fu that came on, I think it was ABC back in the 70s. It actually ran from 72 to 75. Well, I was really into that, and that's what got me into martial arts. And, it was a lot of fun, and I even drug as many students with me as I could into it, so I'd have someone to practice this with. I was so into this thing, I even had the lunch box and got into Bruce Lee later on. And I think I've seen every one of his movies. In fact, my mother would drive me and Russell, who also was one grade up from me, and I usually see him at the science class while I was in the 7th grade building or 7th grade classroom. And so she would take me and him, and I think Scott Johnson as well, over to Mobile Movie Theater, which is by the Greyhound bus station in downtown Mobile back then. I think I've seen every Bruce Lee movie at least 1 or 2 times. And so, Russell would help me go along with some of these kung fu things. We were kind of sort of doing this together, and even Scott Johnson was practicing his football tackling moves. He was really into football. I was hoping I could find a picture of Scott to put in here. I heard he passed away not too long ago. And I also wondered why he never went to public school, because we didn't have football there. Maybe they just didn't have a junior football program at the time. But old Russell, he called me Master Phillips. I thought that was an honor, even though I didn't deserve it. And, you didn't have the internet back then to order stuff. And so anything you got, you had to pretty much get through mail or a catalog. I guess if you had a subscription to a karate magazine, you might be able to find some stuff through that. But my mother wasn't too keen on really buying a whole lot of stuff for me for this. So my mother in Texas had, as you can see in this photograph, had some black pants like you see right there. And I had my grandmother alter them to where they would fit me. And the only bad thing was they zipped up in the back, but I didn't care. I mean, I wanted to be like Bruce Lee, so She altered those to where I could actually wear them. And I made me a pair of nunchucks out of broom handles. And I actually got pretty good with them. Wasn't nowhere near as good as Bruce Lee, of course. But because they were homemade, they were subject to fail. And so I was swinging these things in the kitchen one day and swinging them pretty hard. And the rope broke, and one end of these sticks come flying across the kitchen and hit my granddad right in the back of the head. And I mean to tell you, he was pissed off. And needless to say, I got chased out of the house. But you know, I think he got some sort of karma back out of that, because you know, I swung those things and hurt myself as well, just like you see this guy doing. Now, on another note, there was this guy who I believe was from Japan that was there during the time I was there, but he was several grades ahead of me. In fact, he graduated in '73, and I'd always try to get him to talk to me, but he was just, I guess, too far ahead of me as far as grades. And I kind of thought that if you were from Japan, or you just instantly knew this stuff, and I was kind of hoping that he would give me some lessons, but maybe he didn't know it, or maybe I was just too young for him to fool with. But they also did, these seniors, they did a class inheritance narrative that they'd put in the yearbook for the juniors down below them, and I thought that was kind of cute. I've been reading through these for the last several days. They've been pretty entertaining to read. And so, but if you know anything about this guy, or any of the girls in this photograph, or any other student for that matter, you know, also put them in the comments down below in this video thread, and also check this same thing out on the Facebook page that I've created as well for this. Once you made it out of the Bell building, then you went to a variety of different classes on campus and different buildings as well. Now, I don't know what the name of this building's called up here, but it was a pretty big one. And what you're looking at is from the Bell building looking north. And this is a side view of it looking east. And of course, see that big puddle out there? They were all over the campus. I'm going to have some pretty good stories on that later on. And so you can see where this pretty much was compared to the Centennial building that's there today. And that Centennial building is pretty big, so it pretty much takes up the entire place where this once was. And so pretty much all the classes from the 7th grade all the way to the 12th grade went through these up here. And you can see some photographs of some class pictures and just students in general. Now in this photograph, you can see this is before they painted it white. So a lot of these buildings, if not all of them, except for the wood ones, were made of Clay City brick, and so it's that orange kind of reddish brick. And so they did paint most all of these. And of course this was before it was painted. Now that little stick out on the far end down here was the office, the first office. When I was there, they actually built a standalone office. It was kind of like the 7th grade building. And so this is what the inside of the classrooms look like. And these are what some of the students would look like when I was there as well. And they had these old metal folding chairs. Those things are tough as nails. They're probably still around. And I used to like to lean back in them. And Miss Sewell was my teacher then, and she came up to me and says, "Put that chair down right now." So I put it down, and when I did, the foot came right down on top of her foot, and she was going, "Lift it up, lift it up, lift it up." And I didn't know it was on her foot, and so I was kind of confused. I thought the woman had lost her mind. But as it turned out, when I put the chair down, it went right down on top of her foot. And needless to say, she sat down for the rest of class. But on another note, we had some pretty cool cats that went there, and I often wonder what happened to this guy here, Greg Eason. He looked identical to Greg Allman, and ironically was a massive fan of the Allman Brothers too. And so I went ahead and put together these two comparisons, and they do look just alike. I'd be really curious to see what he looks like today. He also had a brother too named Jeff, I think, that went there later on. But when I was playing there at the Halstead Theater, that's the amphitheater they built there on the playfield that I call it back then. It's at the far south end of the campus. It's a real nice amphitheater they got. We've done a couple of shows there with the Allman Brothers tribute band called Stand Back. And when I was up there doing this, I was thinking of him. I really was, because I was back on my old campus, and a lot of different memories came to my forefront of my memory when I was doing that. And so we had a good time doing that performance there. Hope we do it again. And the Stand Back band is pretty good, guys. I mean, they really are. And I think old Greg would appreciate them too. So if you're out there, buddy, give me a call. And so this is going to pretty much end it up right here. I'm going to do some other ones that's coming up really soon. That's going to pretty much get into the student life. I'm going to pretty much end the classes here, because this is pretty much where I ended as well. Now, I appreciate if you could share these videos, because what happens when you do that is I get people that contact me and I'm able to expand on the next stories. And so, but also subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bells if you want to be notified when I do the next one. And also don't forget that there is a Facebook page for the students of organic. You do not have to be a graduate to be a part of this Facebook page. And thanks again, guys, for watching. Catch you on the next one.